We're just really just getting ready to get started. Just doing a quick introduction right now. And my name is Joe Holbrook. I'm the owner of TechCommanders, an online training platform based out of Jacksonville, Florida. And I've been a cloud architect, cloud engineer, pre-sales engineer for quite a while. And the goal of this meetup, and this is the first one that we're going to basically get into for 2022. I manage the Google Cloud platform Meetup here in Jacksonville, and I also manage the basically the blockchain and cryptocurrency one as well. And they're pretty new, so we're just getting started in 2022. But basically, the course itself is to answer questions really about what a cloud engineer is, why you should become one. I'll talk about the salaries as well. And I also have on the phone Richard as well. He's available for questions and give some insight as well. He's been in DevOps quite a bit, cloud architecture, cloud engineering. And before I get started, Rich, did you want to do a quick intro for everyone?
Yeah, that'd be great. 1 second.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so my name's Rich Ogenti. I've been working in AWS and Azure side of the cloud and in DevOps for the last 11 years. I work on a lot of consulting projects, so I have a lot of really interesting stories and like experiences working with people in that area. So I'm always open for questions there. But I'm also a trainer, and that's how I met Joe with the previous engagement. So that's pretty much about it. Thank you for the intro.
Thanks, Rich. And Sita, would you like to do a quick intro? I know you said you're from Jacksonville.
Yes, my name is Sita. I'm new to Jacksonville. So I'm learning Azure. So I just want to know more. How what is happening. So that's why I joined here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mason, would you like to do a intro as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm actually a technical recruiter here in Jacksonville, and just been working, a lot in kind of the cloud space here in the last few months. So
Sure.
saw this user group pop up on Meetup, and was already very interested in GCP. So kind of thought it'd be great to learn more, and it's only going to improve kind of my knowledge on the cloud space. So that'd be great to join.
Perfect. Welcome aboard, and be happy to talk after. If you want additional referrals and stuff, looking for all that, I'll be happy to see what I can do to help you out as well. So great. And you're based in Jacksonville, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, great. And it looks like we have Diane on the line as well. How are you?
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks. Little trouble trying to find my invite. I was like, it's on my phone, not on my computer. I don't know, but anyway, I'm here, so that's good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Are you in Jacksonville, or where are you located?
I'm actually not in Jacksonville. I'm up in Philadelphia, but I recently want to apply my skills. I'm a senior software engineer, and I'm looking into more cloud opportunities. And I saw your meetup, and I thought it would be an excellent way to get some background. I've been attending some conferences and taking various, online courses here and there, but I just wanted to see what you guys had to say. Looked like a good talk.
Great. Well, welcome. And I think Richard was originally close to where you're from originally. So is that correct, Richard? Pennsylvania, something like that? I might be on mute. Okay. But anyways, let's get started. So basically, we want to basically talk about what it takes to become a cloud engineer with no experience. So basically, this is an interesting topic because I've been working with the cloud from a pre-sales and post-sales perspective for probably about, I want to say 7 years or so. Before that, I was doing more of a hardware and software sales, basically an implementation. So I worked for EMC, Brocade Communications, Cisco partners, and Dimension Data and a few others. And I did a lot of Beltway, Bandit stuff as well for some of the government integrators. But basically, one of the things that I've been involved with quite a bit for the last 3 years has been cloud boot camps, basically. Now, one of the challenges with basically teaching something new, and I'm just going to go ahead and just do a quick mute just so that we remove any static. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and speak up. So, but basically the goal of this this short course is to give you, looks like we have someone else waiting. Let me go ahead and admit them. But basically, we want to just cover a few things today. We're going to talk about what a cloud engineer is, why you might want to become a cloud engineer, what exactly does a cloud engineer sort of go through, what do they do, and I'll go through some short demos in AWS and Google as well, if time permits. And we'll talk about some of the top skills needed. What are the career paths? And for those that just joined, welcome aboard. Rudecki, hopefully I said that name somewhat correctly. Forgive me if I butchered that a little bit. And career salary, training options, and interview techniques. Now, one of the things that comes up as a typical question about how you become a cloud engineer is, what is the route? You know, how do I get from, for example, working, for example, at, let's say, retail, or if I'm in, for example, IT already, how do I go from, let's say, being a software engineer to a cloud engineer? Or if I'm working, for example, now at a bank, or if I'm working, for example, in, you know, as one of my students about a year ago was actually basically an Uber driver, literally. And basically in about a year, he was able to get his first interview and, you know, work a new job as more of a tech support in the cloud. So, you know, whatever route you take, there's probably going to be many options for you. It's just a question of finding what's really going to work for you, because everyone's life is different, complex, and has its own challenges, of course. So a lot of folks that become a cloud engineer can certainly do it working full time, going to a school online, taking a boot camp, taking an internship. So there's a lot of options. All right, so also too, I have today's presentation available for you. Before I forget, let me put that in the chat here. And I'm going to put the link there. And also, I'm going to be sending out a copy of my new book coming out, but it won't be available until about the 20th. And I'll talk more about that as well for you. But let me go ahead and copy the link here. And I'm going to put that in the Zoom chat before I forget. So you have the presentation. And where is the chat? Right there. Okay, so that's the link to download the presentation if you want. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to sort of cover and how we're going to cover it.
I'm just moving over to my laptop. Did you see my thing? I just.
I'm sorry.
Did you see a request for me to come in to the meeting?
Oh,
I'll just leave this one and get on the other one.
I see it now. Thanks. Thank you.
I don't have my big screen. Sorry for.
Yeah, no worries. You should be able to get in now. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, great. Now, let's go ahead and talk about, so generally one of the things I like to do is I like to go through like whiteboards and demos, and I'll provide additional tips on how you can basically get into the cloud. I will provide you that ebook as well. And also too, for anyone that is interested, I'll provide you 1 year of free access to TechCommanders so that you can take any of the cloud courses that you want for free, no cost. And if that's of interest, just go ahead and let me know, and I'll send you the link to sign up. Okay, and quick introduction again, briefly. I've been, again, working in cloud for quite a while. Matter of fact, I was one of the original sort of what I would call users of what was called Google App Engine back in 2009. So I've gone back to Google quite a bit. So with that said, I'm certified in, various clouds and, technologies as well. I'm also a CompTIA subject matter expert. I was one of the original writers for the CompTIA Cloud Plus exam, as well as Cloud Essentials. And lastly, I'm also a prior veteran as well. All right, so what exactly is this cloud engineer title? Because this is another one of those what I call sort of areas that has a lot of room for discussion, because the reality is that there's a lot of different opinions out there. There's a lot of different definitions. If you go to one company, you have to know DevOps. Another company, you need to know, for example, SQL in detail. So basically, let's sum this up basically in sort of a high-level nutshell, and then I'll dig down into sort of the weeds. So a cloud engineer is really an IT professional that's going to build and maintain cloud computing infrastructure. So I know that that's a wide sort of what I would call description, but basically their roles could be basically anything. It could be from designing cloud solutions to coding as well. And one of the things you're going to notice, and I'll talk about the top skills needed to become a cloud engineer, is that there's going to be a lot of what I would call development requirements in a lot of cases. For example, coding, you'll need to know programming languages. We'll talk more about that. So that's where the development and coding comes in. And then administration. So we're going to have to be able to manage users, for example, let them manage security. And that's an ever increasing demand as well for a lot of us that are working in the cloud, because it's always changing. So basically what I'm getting at here is it can be really confusing to know what a cloud engineer is. For example, really in reality, a cloud engineer is really sort of like what I call a hybrid of many other roles in a lot of cases. So it could be a cloud architect at one company, could be a systems engineer, could be a security engineer, support specialist, cloud app engineer, a DevOps cloud architect, and the titles could go on and on. And for example, Richard, for example, who's been working on and off with me as a cohort in different capacities, for example, with Cloud Boot Camps. And he's been working all kinds of different roles, and he's got tons of experience. And I'm sure he could tell you that there is no one definition of a cloud engineer. Would that be a good assumption, Rich?
Yeah, I definitely would. And you hit it on the nose. It depends on the company and the skill sets they're looking for. So I definitely agree.
Yeah, out of curiosity, one of the things I wanted to sort of ask you was, if you were going to become a cloud engineer today, because Rich may need to jump off a little bit early today, so I figured let's go ahead and get his answer just in case. If you were going to become a cloud engineer today, Rich, what would you say would be the top 5 skills you would go out and get today?
One programming language. Python's a good choice. There's obviously others, but just knowing one, that's all I really care about. Terraform's a big factor with infrastructure as code.
Yeah.
Ansible, I mean, there's lots of configuration tools, management tools, but at least if you know one, you can basically jump to another. But I prefer Ansible for many reasons.
Okay.
Knowing one cloud at least. And I guess the fifth one would be I would having infrastructure experience, like understanding infrastructure, to like networking and infrastructure, like to some level, would be important. So those are the 5 skills I would say.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. Very, very great feedback. Thank you, Rich. Yeah. So as you can see, for example, just with the sort of like, oversight that Rich just gave, the number of different roles that could come out of those descriptions could be any number. So there's a lot here. So let's talk about, for example, some IT roles. Now, some of you may be working in IT now, some of you may not. But basically, in a nutshell, let's say if you are in IT right now, some of the roles that could have a natural, what I would call transfer to cloud engineering, could be a systems engineer, could be an enterprise architect, IT engineer, database administrator. If you're in software development as well, that could be another role as well. So you already sort of have a lot of the skills probably. It's just a question of what I would call sort of reworking your skill set and selling yourself in a lot of cases. So with that said, what would be the common requirements? This has been something that I ran into. One of my side gigs is has been doing like interviews for companies for like startups and stuff. And one of the things that I would run into was I try to ask the managers or the tech leads, for example, what are you really looking for? What kind of experience are you looking for? And honestly, a lot of the times, the experience doesn't really revolve around, for example, actually working with AWS or Google Cloud, but just being able to, sort of assemble requirements so that you can actually down the road go to Google Cloud or deploy that, unicorn app or whatever in the next year. And that's, again, depends on your experience, I think, too, and the role that you're interviewing for. But certifications can be a big deal. And I'll talk about what you should probably consider if you're new to the cloud or new to IT coming up. And I have some links for you as well. But basically, the engineer role, if you go to LinkedIn today and you type in cloud engineer, and you'll see, for example, that one company will have totally different requirements than another. And that's due to any number of reasons, of course, right? Every company is going to have just different infrastructure in place. One of the reasons that becoming a cloud engineer is so popular is because of the fact that companies are still migrating to the cloud. Some companies might only have 20% of their IT in the cloud, and they still got 80% to go. So there's still a lot of demand. I'll talk about that coming up as well. Okay, so what would be some of the main reasons to become a cloud engineer? One of the things, if you've noticed, a lot of the what are called analyst reports, even what are called like the IT company reports that come out like from Global Knowledge, like the top skills to have, has, for example, cloud engineering in it. LinkedIn, I think in 2019 or 2020, I forgot, time's flying, came out as cloud engineer being like number 4. But basically the career growth is there. It's in the top 10 roles, generous salary. And the most important thing is it's a reasonable barrier to entry. In other words, it's not so simple that anyone can do it, but it's not too hard where almost no one can do it. So basically, it's going to take some time, some studying, some investment, even in training or investing in coaching or investing in going out and maybe trying to do volunteer work or trying to get a GitHub up and running and trying to sort of show your skills, right? Whatever that is. So there's going to be some work for you to go from point A to point B. The good part, though, and this is something that maybe 5 years ago might not have been as true, is you don't really need a degree anymore. I can't tell you how many folks I have trained and worked with and interviewed that don't have degrees, or if they have a degree, it's not in infotech or in computer science. So because of that, that has really, looks like we have someone else, let me admit them. So basically because of that, the barrier to entry is fairly reasonable still. So, and I'll talk about the salary ranges as well. Now, as far as, did they get in? Okay, good. All right, so as far as like some of the links here in the presentation, check out some of the links and look at what they're saying about cloud engineer. ZDNet had an article that has cloud engineer as a top 10 2020. The Wall Street Journal just came out with an article in November about how there isn't enough cloud engineers. Very interesting enough, not something you'd expect to see in the Wall Street Journal. RHI, and there's at least 10 or 12 others that you could find easily. So what does a cloud engineer do? So one of the common questions that I would get is, what would be our day-to-day activities of being a cloud engineer? The reality of it is if I actually knew what you would do day to day at a specific company, that would probably be more helpful. But I don't, because every company is going to change. It's just the world we live in, right? It's going to be a very dynamic role that you're going to be in. So maybe you're going to be managing security. Maybe you're going to be migrating applications. Maybe you're going to be planning upgrades to applications, whatever it is. But basically, in a nutshell, at a high level, here's what you can expect. It could be anything from services, planning services, deploying to the cloud, for example. Basically, for example, you may have on-prem Oracle-based databases, and you may want to migrate them to the cloud. That requires a lot of planning, a lot of even funding in some cases that you have to figure out. And there could be just any number of tasks that go with that. You want to configure, for example, networking, security, virtual machines. I'll go through some of that here in a demo shortly. Then as far as like creating applications, when I say creating applications, what that sort of means is, depending on the organization, you may have to do some development. Just like Richard was saying, you definitely need to know programming. You need to know one language typically, and that's going to be maybe Python, could be JavaScript, could be Node.js. It just depends on the role. There's no one size fits all. Monitoring is another task as well. So some other ones could be, of course, user accounts, cloud connections. So how do we connect on-prem to, for example, AWS? So one of the challenges too that I think a lot of new cloud engineers run into is it's really easy to, what I call, sort of get distracted by the flashy lights, right? If you've ever been to Times Square, I don't know how it is now, but you go to Times Square for the first time and it's like you're looking around like, holy moly, like, all these lights, all these distractions. And so when you get into the cloud, there's a lot of distractions because there's so many different services, so many ways of doing things. So what I always try to tell folks is try to focus on certain areas that you feel you can do really good at, and then try to sell those. That's really your best approach in a lot of cases, because you're not going to be good in, AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, or Rackspace or Alibaba, whatever you may be working with. Maintain security, scripts, for example, CloudFormation, Terraform. They're going to come into play in most cases. Infrastructure as code is really big right now. Attend and participate in change management meetings, for example. Enable and connect APIs for connectivity and application integrations. So what are the top skills needed? So Richard had covered a lot of these already and gave some great insight, but let's touch on some others that sort of I feel you should also consider as well. Linux. Linux is going to be pretty much the baseline OS you're going to work with in the cloud. So for example, all the providers deploy their services on some form of Linux. You'll also be deploying services on Linux VMs or deploying Kubernetes, for example, on a Linux server, whatever that situation is. Linux is going to come down to something you need to know. Now, should you know AWS Linux or SUSE or Red Hat? That's another discussion for another day. It all depends, right? There's no right answer there. But the reality is that if you go to the interview and say, you know SUSE Linux or you know Amazon Linux, the prospective company should not rule you out in most cases just because you don't know another brand of Linux, right? Databases, this is a big deal. SQL, and every version of SQL is going to be out there in the cloud. And because of that, we need to have some baseline in SQL. Programming, Rich had brought up Python, for example. There's other languages that are on the top 10 list, I would say. What I always sort of recommend to students is just figure out what you could be really good at and then take it from there. Don't try to take, what's on, Stack Overdrive or Stack Commerce or whatever that site, I forgot the name of it. But, basically, don't look at what the list says here every day, right? Don't try to keep up. Stack Overflow, I think it is. They have like a rating with the top 10 development languages, etc. So try to pick something you're going to do good at. But on the other hand, of course, don't pick something like, Perl or something that, is sort of like, not really there in the cloud like some other languages. Try to figure out what makes sense. Okay, networking. This is going to be a big deal, right? We need to know networking connectivity like TCP/IP basics, create a CEDAR range, create a VPC. These are going to be tasks that you'll do every day. Security. As we know, right, just by looking at the internet and the posts on LinkedIn, there's always a breach somewhere. There's always an issue. There's always outages to deal with, right? So security is a big deal. DevOps goes without saying. The world is turning to DevOps more and more every day. Basically, the way applications are developed and basically brought to production is somewhat different than what we would do 20, 30 years ago. Containerization, a big deal, right? We need to be able to talk about Docker. We need to know what Kubernetes is. These are some of the things that you'll learn over time. Virtual machines, pretty much the way the cloud is sort of deployed is through virtual machines. And because of that, we need to know some of the VM platforms, EC2, Compute Engine, and Google Cloud, even VMware would be extremely helpful. We need to also go into, for example, what I would call sort of the thought process over why would I choose AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, right? So we need to think about that before we go to any interviews, of course. And try to, make sure we know the use case for maybe this service over this service. And there's a lot there, but at a high level, we should know that AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure sort of have their pros and cons. They all have little pros and cons. APIs. So the APIs, to make them simple, I like to call them like connectors to the cloud. Another way to look at it is like they're like the on-ramp to the cloud. So basically, we need to know how to put them together and make everything work. Okay, any questions before we get started? I'm going to go through some short demos in AWS. And let's see, do I have time? Yeah, Google Cloud as well. Any questions?
I guess I have a question.
Sure. Diane.
So, I've worked in so many different, I have a long career, like over 25 years, and I've worked in Java, Python in the past, but I haven't worked in it recently. So as I'm looking for a new opportunity, do you suggest like taking a refresher on those, like pick those, like lately I've been working in TypeScript, JavaScript backend.
Okay.
So do I like take a refresher? Is that to my advantage on, let's say, Python or the Java work that I did maybe 10 years ago or whatever, or not? Like, spending your time refreshing your skills? What do you suggest?
That's a great question. It's the first time I've got a question like that. And my initial sort of thought on that is if you've already been programming, even if it was 10 years ago, the reality is that you're still a programmer. Now, maybe you don't know the latest, bells and whistles and Python or something, that's okay. If you want to become a cloud engineer, you already have that head start. You probably know Linux as well. So you've already got like that head start. Now, I would say though, for example, if you know that you want to work, for example, in Google Cloud, for example, you might want to know Golang and spend some time on that to a degree. But again, I don't know if I would invest.
I don't know if somebody would ask me specific questions about how would you do this in Python? I would have to take a refresher. You know what I mean? Like, so is that important?
That could very well be important based on the role that you're taking. I think Rich is on the phone. If Rich would love to pipe in, I think he's got some great insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the main objective is like get your foot in the door. And what I mean by that is at the interview, well, at the technical interview part of it, they might have you like actually sit down and give you like coding exercises, or what I've seen more commonly, they'll basically do basically pure kind of like pure programming, or and they'll like talk to you and like have you review some code and make edits to it or point out like where the issues are, or they might give you like a coding exercise to work through. So and the main thing about it is they're not going to like, if you say you don't know Python, like they might be okay with that. A lot of times it might be, but what they're really focused on is what you say you can do in most cases. So if you say you can do Java on your application, they're gonna be like, all right, we'll do this in Java.
Yeah,
and they're usually pretty simple exercises. And at least even if you get it wrong, well, it depends on the company, but if you at least speak about it and talk about your intentions and talk through it, that they really just want to know that you really know what you're talking about. So, so that's probably my best advice there.
Yeah, I just kind of fear it if I haven't done it for I haven't done it technically, like have to look it up or whatever, just to get back into that particular language. So it's, okay, thanks.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Great question. Great feedback, Rich, as well. Thanks for the insight as well. And that Rich made a great point as well. Don't try to oversell yourself. If you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. And I don't know how many interviews I've been in where, sometimes you could tell someone is sort of puffing. Puffing is a term where you sort of exaggerate your skills. So you don't want to do that because that just starts the relationship off badly with that company. And that could cost you, opportunities down the road, possibly. So great, excellent question and feedback. Okay, let's have some fun now and go open up the console. Let me go ahead and change my screen here and go into the browser. And I'm going to go ahead and share. Where is that? I think this is the one right here. Okay. Can you all see the AWS console okay?
Yep, we can see it.
Great. Okay, great. Okay, now for those that haven't worked in the cloud before, I just wanted to, again, we can't cover like AWS 101 or anything. I just wanted to walk you through some of the common things you may do, talk about some of the scenarios where you might have to use this service, for example. Going to take about 10 minutes to go through AWS and Google, just to give folks that are totally new to the cloud a feel of maybe what you might be doing every day. So basically in AWS, when you log into the account, we have, for example, all of these different services that we could go and search for and find. If you go down here to all services, again, every year AWS seems to add, I would say 10 services on average. And so there's a lot here, but the good part is as a cloud engineer, you may just be focused on 20 or 30 and know them really well. But again, it depends on your organization. So for example, if I wanted to deploy what's called a virtual machine in AWS, I would go to this service called EC2. And what I would do is I'd need to launch an instance. Now, basically, this is a demo account, so I don't have anything running. So I need to go ahead and start something. And let me move my screen over there so I can see it. So I'm just going to go ahead and deploy. Now, for those that are new to the cloud, I just want to point out one thing. If you want to get some practice, all the major cloud providers have like a free tier or a free account that you sign up or credit. So they all work a little differently. But basically, in AWS, we have what's called a free tier. So this free tier here, you can go ahead and use this VM as long as you keep within the specified free tier limit, which is 750 hours a month, which is enough to leave that VM running basically all month. So that's about what it works out to. Okay, so what we want to do is go select this virtual machine. And again, we could literally take a class just on EC2. There's that much there you can sort of play around and modify with it. But you can see over here, let me move this out of the way, I'm sorry, okay. You can see here that we have the free tier eligible again. So basically what AWS does is say, we're gonna let you use our services in a limited fashion for free. That way you get some practice and understand how they work. So as long as you select the T2 Micro, you're good to go. Now, there's a lot here to configure. For time purposes, we, of course, can't go through all that. But again, if that's of interest, there's the free tier courses available on TechCommanders as well you could take, where I go through all this. Now, storage. So when we deploy an EC2 instance, there's basically a volume that's deployed with that instance. That has to be there. Now, we could select basically any number of variations and change the size, but basically there's volume types that you can select. I'm just going to leave it as a default again for time purposes. We could also select encryption if we're using encryption, for example. I could also add additional volumes. So you can see right now, if you're a cloud engineer, just learning a virtual machine can take a little time to figure out all the different options. But again, all of this is attainable. Basically, if you do things like I like to call it the tidbit approach. What I mean by the tidbit approach is every week you take an hour or two and you just learn something new. And then next thing you know, that tidbit approach is going to give you that exposure to 30, 40 different services in a few months. So because of that, again, you want to pick basically the storage. Then over here, add tags. That's just a way that in the world of cloud management and also basically could also be for procurement, billing, for example, where we identify what that virtual machine is for. It's just a way to make things easier from a management perspective. And then over here is where I configure the firewall, basically. So in AWS, we call it a security group, which is effectively a firewall. This is basically blocking traffic or allowing traffic, basically, into and out of the virtual machine. Now, in this case, I'm just going to go to the default. This is just giving me a review. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. Now, one of the things that we have to actually identify here is, do I create a new key pair? Do I select an existing key pair? And then in this case here, I'm just going to go with that instance launching with the already created key pair. And then I go over here to view the instance. And so over here, you can see there's actually one VM running, and then there's one pending as well. So that's just basically how you deploy a VM with the graphical user interface. Now, we could also deploy VMs, for example, in other methods through basically using infrastructure as code. We could also use, of course, the CLI. APIs. There's a number of different approaches that we could learn as well on top of just using the GUI. So because of that, there's a lot here. So as you see right now, you could tell that this is a technical role, right? This is not a role that someone that I would call is administrative per se, you know, pushing paper all day is probably going to enjoy. Or someone that, you know, is like a salesperson, you're going to want to talk to people all day. A role all this, like this is typically going to be what I would call, could be solo in a lot of respects where you have to, you know, manage everything yourself. So there's some things that I always tell prospective students and customers as well is, you know, try to also not only pick the right person for the role, but you should also pick the right role for you if you can in some cases. And I know it's not that easy, but I'm just trying to give you things to think about. So that's AWS. So let's talk about Google Cloud. So Google Cloud, for example, as well, is another public cloud provider. It's number 3 from a perspective of what I would call demand right now. Now, I also will talk about, one of the questions I get is, should I get into AWS, Google, or Azure? And I'll talk more about that coming up because, you know, it's all about where you're located, how you sell yourself, can you get a remote role, or are you in Jacksonville only, right? So there's a lot of variations to that, but we'll talk more about that. Okay, so in Google Cloud, for example, we could go to all kinds of different services. So the comparable to EC2 in Google Cloud is called Compute Engine. And same thing, I could deploy a VM, I could connect to it if I want. And there's all kinds of just, you can see here on the format is different in Google Cloud, the way, you know, it's laid out. So just learning AWS and Google Cloud, it's going to be different. There's going to be a different flow, a different, you know, a different workflow, a different feel, right? So with that said, you can see here, just with VM instances, there's all kinds of fun stuff that you can sort of set up and manage. I could also go over here on Marketplace. And, you know, let's say, for example, I want to deploy Jenkins. So there's different versions of Jenkins that are available. I could, you know, deploy it on Ubuntu, Red Hat, Windows, you know, you name it. So because of that, you could see there's just so many choices that we'll want to consider. Now, let's just briefly talk about like databases. So I could go over here, deploy a SQL database and create that instance. And I could choose in Google Cloud, MySQL, Postgres, or SQL Server. So if I choose MySQL, basically I could call it whatever I want. And then put in a password. And then select the database version. Now, most of the cloud providers, including AWS and Azure, will select very limited versions of SQL, of that version of SQL that you're deploying. So again, a lot of this comes into sort of skill set of being a database administrator, of knowing, is SQL going to be compatible, for example, with my on-prem application? Is my query engine going to be able to work? For example, a lot of organizations will have like programs that are hard coded. So if you upgrade or change the version, that could cause havoc as well. So there's a lot of things that you have to pay attention to. I choose the regions and zones, but in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and create the instance just for show and tell here. And it'll go ahead and deploy that instance. It'll take a few minutes to come up. But if I go back over here to the dashboard, you can see here I could go deploy storage, App Engine, but I could also go over here and deploy any number of services and application, based services as well, I should say. So it could be AI, ML, you name it. And then managing billing, for example, error reporting, monitoring. That's another whole specialization in a lot of cases in itself, depending on the organization. So there's a lot here. Again, love to talk more about this, but for time purposes, we'll need to move on. Is there any questions on anything so far?
Does Google Cloud also have a free thing that you could play with?
Yeah, absolutely. Google Cloud does have a free tier, and also I believe, and this is a move-in target, I think it's like a $300 credit. Let me just double check here. Google Cloud free credits, I think. So it's, you get a free trial and a free, yeah, it's still $300. So they have a free tier. So that, what that means is you could use that specific service for free, like in AWS, up to so many hours or so many gigabytes or terabytes of usage. Now, the free credits is sort of cool because that also allows you to use services that are not part of the free tier up to $300. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
So
Great.
Google Cloud gives you like a bonus. AWS, Azure have sort of stopped that. But I think Azure actually, I think actually does have the free credits in a lot of cases. We could check on that as well. But I know AWS has sort of just went to the free tier. And now I will say though, you can get free credits typically when you go to like a trade show or talk to your sales engineer. They can give you some free credits as well. MS Azure free credits. And so Azure gives you 12 months of free services, 25 plus services, and it is actually $200 in Azure now. So again, and then if you're a student, for example, now this is actually a good point, and I didn't add that to my content, but I will make a note of it. If you're a student and you have a .edu address, AWS gives you a lot of additional free services, just like Azure and Google. So if you have still a .edu address, sign up for like the education allowances that are available as well. So, okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. All right, let's talk about salaries, right? We're all sort of curious about that, right? What does a cloud engineer earn? Now, the good part about a cloud engineer is that there's a lot of salary surveys out there, a lot of statistics. And can you see my PowerPoint okay? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, we can see.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, perfect, okay. So for example, according to RHI, so no, I think it's Robert Half Technology. I think they used to be called RHA, but maybe I'm confusing it. RHT now, basically, they did a lot of surveys, and it's anywhere from 94,000 to 159,000 is just one of the surveys that was done. And then over here, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn has salary surveys as well. And the range is, is going to be really a generous range. Now, if you're new to the cloud, you may be down around 80K a year, 60K. I've seen, I did see one student, who got probably a 70K salary in Austin, which is nothing in Austin. But it's a good start, right? It's better than working, for Uber. So, it's a good start, and then you work your way up, right? But again, the top earners are going to be in the mid, 160, 170K range. But the average is about 128K according to ZipRecruiter. Now, Glassdoor has similar results as well. You'll see most of the surveys are typically within 10% from the bottom to the top from what I've seen. So again, once you get through your interview process, you get hired, you're going to start out making some probably good money compared to what you might have been making. So I always tell folks, don't expect to reach the moon yet. Try to get to the stratosphere or something, right? But that takes time too as well. You just got to climb a little at a time typically. Okay. So make sure that's sticking there. Okay. All right. So how do we get to become a cloud engineer? So I've got a few more slides left and some references, and then we'll go to Q&A. So how do you get to become a cloud engineer? What would be the path you would take? Basically, there isn't a right or wrong path, to be honest. The one thing I can say is that the days of having to go to college is going to be pretty much over for a lot of organizations. Now, is it true that if you want to work for Deloitte or Accenture or something, do you need to have that master's degree in technology or something? That's still pretty true. But if you want to work for, one of the FANG companies, they don't require it anymore. If you want to work for the state, local government, or you want to work for your average financial institution, a lot of the times they don't even look for that. They just want to know that you're going to be dependable, that you're going to go in and do your job, and you're going to make a difference to the organization. So basically, take a cloud boot camp is typically the most traditional. Do you need to do that? No, honestly, I'm not trying to sell you boot camps. I'm not here for that. But basically, it's all about just understanding that can you take, for example, online courses and learn enough and build your resume and get some experience? Sure, you can do that. Will it take you longer than if you went through like a boot camp or maybe a college, like a certificate program like at a college? Probably it could, but it all depends on you, right? I always tell folks it's really up to you. Also, too, a lot of companies do offer, I've seen, for example, I think it's called, there's a company here in Jax that was offering that as well. They're like a healthcare company. They're off of Gate Parkway. I think it begins with an S. I'll have to look it up, but they were looking for, wasn't a cloud engineer, it was like a cloud support specialist, and they're looking for an intern to do that. So that was sort of cool. And UNF seems to be the big player here, along with FCSJ, I think, as well. So what I'm getting at here is whatever the route is, there's no right or wrong route. It's just whatever you're willing to invest in, what you have the resources for, whether it's time or money. But also, too importantly, is try to get some certs, right? We have to go in to that interview saying, okay, I have this baseline knowledge and I passed the cloud practitioner exam. Or better yet, I passed the SysOps exam from AWS, which the SysOps exam is traditionally known as the hardest technical exam out there still, at least in AWS. Now, are there harder exams with more specialized knowledge? Of course, but the SysOps is actually not an easy exam. And if you can pass that, they should have that sort of comfortable feeling that, Diane or, Sita, for example, has that baseline knowledge and can deploy a VM, can secure that VM, can connect, for example, our connectivity to a VPC and add, for example, subnets to it, right? So it's all about being able to have that baseline. All right, so let's set expectations here. Now, can you, start studying today and get a job in 3 months? Sure, it's more than possible. Is it, something you should expect? Probably not, but it could happen. A lot of things too just come down to where you are in life, who you know, how you sell yourself, right? So if you're able to really sell yourself and you get your certifications, you go through some of the training. One of the things too that we're actually looking at helping a lot of folks get started is sort of start like a internship here locally. And I'm sort of getting together with FSCJ on that, trying to establish a program where we could get some kind of documented internship to help, folks that are taking cloud classes, sort of some kind of what I would call baseline start, right? So you go in and say, oh, I was an intern for 3 months, with, TechCommanders or another local company, for example. So we're trying to assemble a program here locally. We don't expect to have that, in place until probably, it's hard to know, things just work slower nowadays, it seems like, but time goes quicker. So I would like to say, by May, but I can't control all of the processes myself. So I'm dependent on other people to sort of work on that. All right, so with that said, what I'm getting at is, can you get started, making 60, 80K a year as a cloud engineer in a few months? Possibly. Wouldn't be the first time it's happened. But is it more reasonable to expect in 5, 6 months that might be where you would be ready to interview? Absolutely. So you should expect to at least, so if you don't take a cloud bootcamp, if you don't take, for example, courses online or pay for them if they're all free, that's your call. But you should expect to spend money on certifications. My recommendations for certifications would be the cloud practitioner. That's $100, I believe, still. But again, if I'm wrong, let me know. The SysOps is going to be $200, for example, to take that exam. And once you pass it, also to consider the Google Cloud Associate Engineer. Also to the Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals as well is a great start. And there's just so many other training options out there. Now, as far as training, there is free and paid available. If you have questions on additional information on training, let me know. As I stated, I'll provide anyone access to TechCommanders for free. I have 40 courses on there. AWS, Google Cloud is really my focus, but I have a lot on blockchain as well. And also what I would call the introductory certifications like CompTIA Cloud Plus or Network Plus, for example, the CompTIA certs that, IT pros probably should have the level skills in anyways. So those are available as well. Now, there's Cloud Bootcamp. So, for example, the two big players, I think, in Cloud Bootcamps right now is Simplilearn is probably number one. The cost for that bootcamp is going to be about anywhere, and again, it's negotiable to a degree, but it could be anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 typically is the cost the student pays. Quick Start Learning is another one. I think their cost was about $35,000 or $4,000 as well. There's also another program called, I think, Interview Quick Start. They're about $5,000, but they don't really provide a lot of that training, like introductory training that you might need, but they're more focused on interview skills. So again, if you want to go that route, that's your call as well. Then there's coaching. So one of the things that might help people is to get some coaching with sort of getting ready to interview or just learn cloud skills. That's, could be anywhere from like $75 an hour to $200. I've seen some of I think Interview Quick Start charges $200 for 45 minutes. So it's all over the map as well. Meetup. So one of the, and you all know probably meetups already because you're here. Meetups can be a great resource to get great training, meet new people, even maybe find your next interview target, right? So it's all about, working together. We're here to help. Just reach out if you have any questions, seminars and events. Now, I'm going to be honest, you all have it a lot tougher than it was 2 or 3 years ago before, all the COVID events and all that. there is just meetup after meetup in person, free seminars, paid seminars everywhere that you could think of. But that's been pretty limited. That is starting back up. With that said, though, for those that are local in Jacksonville, I do have a meetup that's in person as well. And then in March, I'll be holding a 1-week cloud bootcamp, cloud engineer bootcamp. That'll be in March. I'm going to release the date on Meetup probably next week once I secure, the room for that and all that, and I'm confident we'll kick it off. So that'll be available as well. And then also too, online meetups are still available, so just be aware of that. Okay, so I think this is the last section, interview techniques before closeout. So one of the things that I'll get, and one of the things that I try to work with students on and clients, is how do you prepare for that interview? So it's really important to go into an interview first and foremost confident, right? Confident in your skills. You should realize that maybe your first interview may not work out as well just because you don't know what to expect. And I'll be honest, for my 30 years in IT, I've been in probably 100+ interviews, more than likely, easily, just being the interviewee and then, the interviewer as well. So because of that, there's just so much that can occur with an interview, and to get that interview, to get in place to be able to sell your skills to that company. So on your first interview, I always, tell students and clients, this might be your hardest interview because you may not know yourself fully yet, your skills, and you need to, okay, that's, all right, now everybody wants to join, it looks like. Okay, I've got a few other people. Did I admit him? Okay, it looks like Jeremy is here. Look like, okay, Shirley just dropped off, okay. Okay, so welcome aboard, Jeremy, as well, okay. All right, so this is recorded, so for anyone that has joined, you can access the recording as well. But basically, just be aware that don't expect more out of yourself than what's reasonable. But I also tell folks because so for me, I've always sort of come off as sort of like, I don't know if arrogant is the right word, but sort of like overconfident sometimes. And you have to know yourself. So if you get ready for an interview and it's your first cloud computing interview, it can be challenging, it can be overwhelming. Like, what are they going to ask me? And the number one thing that scares a lot of prospective interviewers is having to do the whiteboard. So a whiteboard question, like how does this work, or how would I design something? Those can be the most challenging because a lot of folks, they just break down. I've been in interviews where someone was literally like, working for this high-end consulting company, would whiz through all the answers and coding questions, but when it got to the whiteboard, just couldn't put it together. It just was the strangest thing. So sometimes the whiteboards can be the scariest. So it depends on the type of interview, what company, their processes, there's a lot there. So try to realize your first interview could be your hardest. Your second interview, you'll get more confidence. You'll have an expectation of what you might expect. Your third interview, you should feel confident in your skills and how to explain cloud as well. So by the third interview, you should be ready to go, be honest, right? All those things. Now, one of the things too, lost my mouse here, there it is, okay. When it comes to interviews, always be polite. So I know that sounds silly, show up on time, right? You'll be surprised. I would say in the last year, I've done about 12 interviews on Zoom for prospective, cloud roles. And oddly enough, one was Brocade. Brocade I haven't worked with in like 10 years, literally, but I still help out one company with interviews. But basically, what I'm getting at is you'll be surprised how many people cannot show up on time. It's pretty surprising. So with that said, just show up on time, be polite, answer questions. If it's an in-person interview, try to bring your resume with you. If it's on Zoom, have a PDF ready on a file share and share that link with the people that are interviewing you. You'll be surprised how many times people forget that. And that can make the difference between the interviewers sort of like, wanting to just say yes and get it over with, because and I'm sure Richard, you could speak up on this if you're available. I think he had to drop off, but this happens quite a bit. So what I always tell folks is prepare, right? And I think, Mason, you're a recruiter. I'm sure you probably have some great insight on this as well. You have any thoughts on that? Do you see that quite a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can just confirm what you're saying regarding showing up on time. It's kind of always a little shocking to me that, just being even a minute or two late, it's kind of starting the entire process off on a bad foot, versus being early, being presentable. Even I think the hardest thing with this COVID change has been, Zoom sometimes can feel a little more impersonal, but still, professionally dressed. And then two, I think what always goes a long way, as far as feedback from managers is really being interested, like your last point in the actual company and individuals that are interviewing you.
Yes.
So, making sure you have questions prepared, because, you are kind of interviewing the company as well. So just really being engaged and interested.
Okay, excellent. And I know you're attending and not really, but I love the additional insight. If there was any advice you had to, the fellow attendees that are looking for a new job right now, what would be sort of some of the things you sort of provide them for advice, especially like in Jacksonville, for example?
I mean, reply to my LinkedIn messages, but I mean, more so just, like I mentioned, being presentable for the Zoom interview.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
And do you recommend a suit and tie nowadays, or is it more dependent on the company?
Depending on the company, but I would say more so like, minimum button down. Kind of unbelievable. See people interviewing in t-shirts and
really? Yeah.
I get it's Zoom, but you should still dress up a little bit.
Or the sports polo shirt. Never show your team. That's something I ran into.
But I mean, I would just say too, being confident in your experience.
Okay.
When I first talk to somebody, I can tell usually pretty quick, how confident they are in their actual abilities.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you. All right, great feedback. Okay, so I think I have 2 more, maybe 3 more left, but if there's any questions, feel free when I'm closed to answer them now. Also, another thing too is always update your LinkedIn profile. There's also too, I have a copy of this or a snapshot of my profile. Make sure on LinkedIn that you put in open to. So are you looking for work, or are you looking to provide services? What is, your situation? This can sort of open up new sort of opportunities or add you to that search, that I think recruiters would get on LinkedIn. And again, do what you can to get your word out there, to get your name out there, your skills, right? Also too, for those that are military or former military, US veteran that is, LinkedIn does give you a 1-year free subscription, and the link for that is right there. So take advantage of that. That's a premium. That includes LinkedIn Learning as well. So take advantage of that if you can.
What does the premium supply?
So the LinkedIn premium supplies a couple things to like job searchers, for example. And so basically what it does is it gives your profile better visibility. It's similar to what I would call like the paid ads in Google versus like native search. So you rank a little bit higher. It also sort of provides you access to additional like messaging capabilities, like I think it's called, what is it, LN messages or something, or whatever. But basically, it also gives you access to LinkedIn Learning and lets you like post additional skill completion badges and stuff like that. Then there's other benefits. A lot of that, I don't actually use. I just, just try to use the premium for the LinkedIn Learning, then also too for the additional ranking. But
I just didn't know if it was worth it. Like, if, in your opinion, do you think it's worth it?
In a lot of
invest in
cases,
that?
no, honestly, probably not. If you have a skill set that is, in high demand, like TypeScript, for example, I mean, not a lot of people know that. That's a niche area still from what I understand and what I've been looking into. So you may not, if you have certain skills that are in high demand, probably not. On the other hand, if you're new to the cloud, having that extra boost might actually help you. But again, I think, it's all about experience in a lot of cases, I think. But for me, it has worked when I was, looking for work years and years ago. I've used it for years and years. For me, it works out well. I'm pretty much, self-employed, of course, now, but, again, I just wanted to show folks how that would work. So if you show yourself open to work and you could, use premium, it gives you a different badge color as well, I think. And it does sort of just rank you a little bit better. That's what they say. Also, too, I think, and this might have changed. So if you go to apply for a job on LinkedIn, it also, I think, allows you to apply to more jobs as well with the apply on LinkedIn button. Again, don't quote me on that, but they've changed some of that around. But they have a page there that tells you what it includes as a job seeker. Also, too, the premium changes based on like if you're self-employed or a recruiter, for example. So it all depends on what role you're actually playing on LinkedIn. So,
Okay,
To,
thanks.
yeah, take a look.
just to piggyback too.
Oh,
on
go
your
ahead,
updating-
Mason.
Just to piggyback too, just in case anyone's not aware, like updating your LinkedIn profile, like recruiters are going to search with keywords essentially.
Yeah.
So really treating it like almost a virtual resume is just going to help you, pop up more and, jobs that are relevant to your kind of skill set and backgrounds.
Yes, excellent feedback. Thank you, Mason. What are some of the basic interview questions you might get? So these questions could be as straightforward as just provide us an example of what you had done in your last job. And so don't go into an interview without some kind of like accomplishment in your previous job. Now, what about if you haven't had a cloud job before, you haven't been in IT? Again, it's all relative in a lot of cases. So if you worked at Starbucks as a barista, so what? If you have accomplishments like you got an award or you got the best customer service award, that's something you could talk about, right? So just go in and try to have something that you could, sort of show that you can accomplish something. That sort of seems to be something that a lot of what I would call prospective job seekers sort of forget, or they don't have a really good answer, right? So try to get that in place. What would be your primary reasons for selecting VMs based on cost? What are some of the cloud security issues you've dealt with in the cloud before? These are just some of the questions. What kind of cloud projects have you worked on? So you want to get some of the answers to the basic questions that you can expect in a cloud engineer role. One of the favorite questions that I typically run into why would you select like AWS over like Azure or GCP? There's, again, any number of reasons to do that. It's all about really understanding how to answer the question. All right, so as far as resources, feel free to go to techcommanders.com and just sign up for the free tier. I'll look at the Meetup list, and if I see your name on it, I'm going to add you automatically to the paid tier, so you have access to all the courses and practice questions as well. There's also on AWS, they have what's called skill builders. These are free courses and also like exercises that you go through that are free on AWS. There's also Azure free courses as well that are available. Also too, Rivia.io is also another site that offers free courses and training. That was Richard's site. He had dropped off the call a little early because of a meeting. He also offers a lot of free help and advice as well. Meetup groups, of course, is a great resource. Now, another resource for those that would like to have a little bit more hand-holding, as I would call it, or confidence building, mock interviews, additional training. I have a program on TechCommanders that's being released at the end of the month. The February session is going to be starting. It includes over 12 plus hours of on-demand training, plus about 4 hours plus of coaching, one-on-one. It's not group coaching. I do have group coaching included in that. It's a lot more affordable than Interview Quickstart for sure, and other cloud boot camps. So it's that option where someone, doesn't want to fork over $5K, but a few $100s is better than no help. So that's sort of the way this is being placed. So that's on techcommanders.com, Cloud Interview Ace. And then I do have a book, and as promised, I'm going to email everybody a copy of that. The release date is January 21st, and that's going to be How to Become a Cloud Engineer with No Experience. And there's right now, there's about 160, 80 pages of resources, free, paid. I go through the pros and cons. I also go through a lot of interview questions. And I also give you a roadmap as well to sort of get you prepared for changing your career, basically. And then also available now is the Google Cloud Associate Cloud Engineer exam as well. And I have about 8 other books on AWS and Google as well. So that's all that I had. If there's any other questions, feel free. I'm got plenty of time for questions. Also too, please pay attention to the additional meetups. Before I go, let me share my screen just to give you an update. For those interested in learning Google Cloud, I have a free course that is online that you're welcome to attend. And let me share my screen here. Okay. That's it right there. Okay, so basically in the Google Cloud one, I also run the blockchain one as well. We have coming up an in-person event here in Jacksonville. There's a free, this is like a 6-hour course on how to become a Google Cloud digital leader. Generally, this course would be, $300 or $400 online, but I'm going to teach it live. It's for free. I think we're limiting it to like 20 folks that are interested. So sign up if you're interested. And then also there's another online cloud engineer Zoom call as well. Now, I also will be hosting a intro to, I think I've got this. Oh, I think I might, there should be one more here. How to use Google Cloud as well. That'll be coming up in January as well, second week. So just be aware of that. So wanted to let you know that. So then over here is Cloud Interview Ace. So if you go over here, you don't have to, all you need to do, you don't have to use a credit card. Just go and feel free to sign up. For example, if you want to look at AWS, you can do that. You go to the course details here and just go to membership. That's probably quicker. And just sign up for the trial. And if I see you registered, with your email and I can correlate it to the Meetup, I'll give you access to the full portfolio of courses and practice questions, basically automatically. If I don't add you, it's just because I couldn't correlate your email, for example, to the Meetup in the name. So just reach out to me and let me know. Is there any questions or anything? Can I help anyone with anything?
I have another question about the cloud architect. I've been in a lot of architecture positions. And what is the difference, like the architecture versus the practitioner? And like, do you have to get certified in both, or are they really different paths?
They're actually somewhat different paths. I will say, like, so Google looks at the world differently than like AWS and Azure to a degree. So for example, is there a certain cloud you want to focus on? Just curious.
I was impressed with the Google Cloud, with the Next that I attended. I liked a lot of the things they were doing.
Oh, you went to Next, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I specialize kind of in security, so in the past. So I really see, I like a lot of their AI and the way they,
yes.
I'm really impressed with all that. So I would kind of like my opportunity. I'd like to concentrate on Google, I think, just because I really liked the things they were doing.
Okay. Yes, and Google, has some great services, great capabilities, and they're just making themselves better. They're sort of like the late player in the game when it comes to a lot of the services, but so basically I've taken pretty much all the certs for the fun of it, like the beta exams. If you ever want to punish yourself, take a Google Cloud beta exam. So the security one is one you might want to take down the road. But to get to your question more directly is, if you want to take like the Cloud Architect, that was Google's first certification, and that's the most accepted and the most widely known. Now, is that the easiest? Probably not. It can be very challenging because of like, one of the things between like the cloud engineer and cloud architect is that the engineers can be more hands-on. Like, how would I use G Cloud, or how do I deploy a Kubernetes cluster, for example, on Google Cloud? And you'll need to know a lot of the CLI requirements. Whereas a cloud architect, you don't really need to know the CLI. So it's more use case driven, like, should I use Cloud Functions over Compute Engine? Why would I want to do that? Or App Engine. Do I deploy my containers on App Engine, or do I deploy them on Kubernetes Engine? So those are the architecture sort of expectations. So my thought is if you want to do more hands-on, then look at the engineer first. If you're not really interested in that per se, and you want to more architect and put things together, go with the cloud architect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
They're vastly different tests. So
Right.
again, you'll see if you take cloud engineer or cloud architect, compare them, the command lines and sort of like how to fix things is much heavier in the cloud engineer. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Great. Any other questions? Okay. So with that said, in about 2 weeks, a little less than 3 weeks, I will be sending out the ebook to you as well on how to become a cloud engineer. That should be fully ready. It'll also be posted on Amazon as well. on Kindle, but you'll get a free copy. So just let me know if for some reason you don't get it by the end of like January. But I'll be sending out about January 21st or 22nd. So that I have a note to do, so don't worry, I will take care of it. But with that said, I hope to see everybody again in another meetup down the road. If there's anything I can do to help you out, please feel free to reach out. If there's any resources or courses or anything you have questions on, let me know. I'm happy to do what I can to help out there as well. All right, so with that said, if there's no other questions, I'm pretty much done for the day. And also too, for those that are interested in blockchain and cryptocurrencies, there's a couple fun meetups coming up. I also have some guest speakers on some of them that are fairly well known in the blockchain industry, so looking forward to that. I also have a group discussion on a meetup around the metaverse and what that means for techies, basically. So with that said, feel free to check those out as well. That's all that I had. So thanks again for joining. And the recording will be available as well. So I'll send a link out for that. Great. All right. Well, thank you, Mason, Sita, Diane, Jeremy, and Radecki. Forgive me if I didn't say that right. So have a great rest of your day.